Welcome to Rutland. This extraordinary piece of water behind me is about to host one of the biggest lure fishing competitions in the world. And while we mention that word competition, let's just have a little think about it, shall we? It's all very well fishing against each other, but behind me are some of the best lure anglers anywhere in the world. This is the 11th World Lure Fishing Championships. It's all about national pride. It's all about the flag.
There is, yeah, there's a lot of expectation, all eyes are on us, you know, to do well, especially with my appointment. It was kind of a pointy appointment, but yeah, there is some expectation, but it's a new team, you know, it is a new team, and I started off with 12 blokes, just blokes, and now I've got together a team, so they've all come together as a team. It's been working well.
Well, of course, we wouldn't settle for anything less than gold, you know, but, you know, we're not looking at that. We're looking at, you know, our guys are looking at working hard every minute, every second, you know, every hour. You know, we think that, you know, when you combine hard work with, you know, with knowledge of, you know, the lake, the species, the research that we've done, you know, and just the idea of, you know, competing, you know, our guys, our anglers have done this on a professional level in the United States, so they know what it takes to win. You know, they're winners back there. The world stage is a different story. This is, you know, the best anglers in the world. And so they haven't competed at a world level before. So trying to tell them, you know, what to do, you know, what they're up against and, you know, the kind of people they're up against, you know, is it's a little tough for me to explain that as a competitor in the past. So I try to do my best to prepare them and, you know, and get them ready and then let their instinct take over. And, you know, we just hope for the best in the end.
We are prepared to do it well and very well to do our job. So it's not pressure for us. It's like some kind of everyday routine. Yeah.
I like it. So being the best is an everyday routine.
Yes. It's like our jobs.
So I've got some help talking about this fantastic event in the shape of this man here. This is Matt Boast, who is a lure angler who has fished pretty much all over the world. I'm really interested in your take on what we're going to see over these next couple of days, Matt, because that opening ceremony, there was a real sense of excitement, a real buzz of national pride.
Yeah, it's been really, the atmosphere, the way it's building towards this event, and I've been in this position, those guys must be super stoked. You know, it's all building, the tension's building, the pressure's building, but more importantly, the excitement is building, and we've felt that.
You look around the circuit that you've been involved in kind of across Europe and elsewhere, you know quite a few of the people that are fishing in this event. I mean, what are we going to see these next 2 days? There are some really good anglers out there.
Yeah, so there's some class anglers. We're going to see, I think, a lot of tactics of what they're doing, how they're going to interpret what they've done in their practice days, because you're going to have an A plan, B plan, C plan, then you're going to have to take into account what if the wind's this direction, what if the wind's that direction, what if the perch aren't feeding, what if the pike aren't feeding. So there's so much that the team will have had to all bring together for that event and come up with a plan and then pick the right plan.
A quick word about Rutland water, because behind you is probably one of the best pieces of predator water anywhere in Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for us, this UK, this is like predator mecca. Rutland, maybe Grafham as a close second, you know, but yeah, this is where people come. That opening day of the season, you want to catch predators from a boat, this is where people migrate to.
Matt, this is going to be a really interesting exercise. We're in the final afternoon of practice. We're approaching lunchtime, just in a few of the guys going back in, having had an interesting practice session this morning. My first impressions are that we're going to have some serious issues with the weather this weekend. Not a vast amount we can do about that, but it is what it is. What are you seeing so far as we're pootling gently out?
Well, we've come out, and as we've come out instantly, we've been seeing quite a bit of bait fish on the edge of the shallow water. That was more sort of over towards the sailing club as we came out initially. So we're seeing a lot of these arcs on the screens, fish sitting in the deeper water, so you can see that on the screen there. Also, we've seen a few shoals of perch, so they're showing up a lot more denser and a lot larger. So the competition's focused around pike, perch and zander. So obviously the pike are going to give you quite a lot of length, and I think in the scoring situation you're getting a good few points out of that.
Yeah.
So I think potentially, I mean, you commented earlier how warm it is.
Yes.
Ridiculously warm. So I mean, the pike may well be up in some of these bays.
It's such a vast sheet of water, so deep as well. The fish can be absolutely anywhere, and of course they're naturally occurring here, so they've been born and raised in this water. The weather doesn't bother them. They'll be where they're going to be. It's just a case of whether the anglers can catch them. Now what we're going to be doing is just wandering around out here to show you one of the two tactics and the terminology that's going to be used by us two over this weekend. And one of the key factors, one of the things that can make or break your World Championships, is how effective you are with the electronics, because the technology now available in lure fishing is incredible, and all of the boats you'll see are fitted with trolling motors, various different sorts of electronics from all different companies, and they all do slightly different things, and they all help you to find out where the fish are and actually what kind of water they want to sit in as the rain starts hammering down. And Matt, we're just bimbling around looking at the French team who are practicing just in the kind of the slightly calmer waters in the lee of the trees over to our right. One of the interesting parts of this entire process is communication. So during this practice session, here they are exchanging a little bit of information, you know, maybe what lures they're using, that sort of thing. But you were saying a couple of minutes ago something very interesting about the kind of secret signals that the teams might be using. Tell us a bit about that.
You could have something as subtle as hats on normally, or hat off even, for just normal fishing, nothing's really going on. And then if they've had maybe 2 fish or something like that, they might have their hat to the side.
I like what you've done,
like
very
that.
stylish.
Or if they're absolutely bagging and cleaning up, they're going to be proper bad boy
I see.
and have their hat on backwards. So when somebody's motoring past them and they see them with their hat like that, they think, oh. And that will mean, I'm going to leave this spot, you need to pull straight into it and get your quota of fish. You see it with the Aussies on the kayaks. They'll literally hold off on a shoal of fish and they'll rotate in on it so that they each get a turn at the fish and they get an even amount of points across the whole team. Very clever, very clever. But that's what it's about, team working.
Yeah, it is.
Team event. It's no good having one really good angler, so that's what they're going to have to do. You're going to have to pick a mixed team that are all going to gel together and work together, and it's going to be good to see the different countries and how they do that.
So as this kind of sport is a bit of a niche discipline, I thought it might be useful if we ran through a few of the things that we're going to see and that we're going to hear this weekend. So Mr. Boast is just going to go through a couple of the little bits and pieces. You've brought 3 rods out with us at the moment. There are a couple of other tactics that we can talk about as we go, but just kind of run through a couple of the setups that we might be seeing and hearing about, Matt.
Right, so let's go with the basic 2 types. This is a bait caster setup, yeah? So that's one of the setups that you're definitely going to see the guys out there. You've also got your basic fixed spool setup as well. So this is what people will be more commonly
This is
familiar
the sort of shop
with.
you can literally walk into your local tackle shop and buy one of these, can't you?
Yeah,
pretty
you
much?
can get both. The difference is this is a lot easier and more user-friendly to use. So when you take your bail arm off, cast your line out with this, it hits, you put your bail arm over and you start retrieving your lure. With this, you've got to push down with your thumb, which puts it into free spool, so then the line's coming off. But you've got to be careful that once it reaches the end of the cast, because it's gathered quite a lot of momentum, you're going to have to put your thumb on there to act as a brake as it hits the water. If you don't do that, all the line pours off and you get a massive bird's nest on it. So this is not ideal for a beginner.
Just like a multiplier in sea fishing in some sort of ways, a scaled down version of it.
Yeah, it's a bait caster, a lower profile.
So the other thing, of course, with this competition, 3 main species that the anglers are after, nothing else counts. All we've got is pike, perch and zander.
Yeah.
There are different amounts of those fish in this fantastic piece of water. Tactically, your choices about which ones you go for and when are massively important.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a huge factor in any competition, and making that call and deciding which species to go for at what part of the day can make or break the competition. 100%.
With the pike fishing particularly, because obviously this is a competition based around measurement of fish, so each fish you catch has a centimetre, it gets measured, so a pike that might be a metre long is obviously better than 3 small perch or 4 smaller perch. So the temptation would be potentially to go for the pike, but perhaps the pike are the most difficult fish to catch. Is that probably the fair comment?
I'd say that's a fair assumption. Once you're on the perch, they're going to be in the shoals. We've seen them on the finder screens, little Christmas trees or little mushrooms, so loads of them together. And we cut some footage earlier where the guys were literally bang one, bang another. They were just taking those shoals apart. And I know some of the England boys in practice, so methodical, like literally clinical in how they're just taking those fish out those shoals. So yeah, the perch are going to be shoalfish. Zander to a certain degree are shoalfish. Once you've found them, they're going to be in that area. But yeah, you are right. Pike are going to be in a completely different area. They are more going to be. You will get pike in the deep, so they might throw up a really big pike out the deep water, maybe even pelagically. We've seen some of the guys going around looking on their finders, and they can identify what those fish are.
And again, in terms of tackle for the pike, that will probably be heavier rods, wire traces for a start.
Absolutely.
Maybe bigger lures.
Yeah.
We might see some big stuff thrown around this weekend.
Yeah, and I think they'll probably nip into the shallow bays to maybe target the pike. Still warm, like we said earlier.
Interesting stuff. So Steve, how's your morning going? This is the big one, isn't it?
It is the big one. It's nervous. There's nerves around. I think we've got a good camp. You know, I left them all alone last night, and they've all had a good meal together. They've discussed tactics. You've had to go through the heartbreak of telling the 2 that are dropped. That was a massive decision, and it's a horrible, horrible decision. But it has to be made, you know. They've got to get the boots on, they've got to get the bib on and start running up and down the bank, warming up to come on a Super Sub Sunday. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult decision to make, that is, and that was made last night.
Can you explain to me how you've reached that decision? Because that's one of the, you know, being a manager, that must be the most difficult bit, actually saying to people you've been working with for months, sorry, you're not fishing tomorrow. How'd you do that?
My whole appointment was based around data and analytics of data. I've took it from other sports. So what we've done, I've got player ratings. Everybody in the team has had a player rating built up via data analysis. And the player ratings at where they were, they're 2 very, very good anglers, but since Pittsford, early in, I think it was August, until now, on their player rating, like passes made, percentages made, we've worked it out exactly like that. Their player ratings were just below another team that have done really well. So it was done that way.
The thing that is really kind of very clear to me through this competition, what I love about it, boys' toys, there are lots, aren't they? You know, radios, fish finders, all sorts. It's amazing.
There's a lot of tech. There's a lot of tech, you know, from actually live view now. You can see what's going on under the water, live view, to GPS. So as part of our data analytics side, we've got minutes to every single spot that we've got. And we've got minutes for, depending on what the wind direction is. So
we've seen this in a fishing competition before.
No, we know now that one of our spots we're going to is going to take us 19 minutes. And if the wind changes the other way, it's going to take us 26 minutes. And we know exactly what weights we've got in the boat. So
looks like it's all happening, matey. Very best of luck.
It is, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.
Ricky, after all the practice, you found yourself on the sidelines today. I have to ask you what that's like.
Well, of course, I'm a little bit disappointed, but it's for the team, right? It is tactics, and it's for Team England, so I'm quite happy about it. Quite happy.
When you look around this venue, I mean, the quality of the anglers here, the sort of everything that's going on, this is going to be an extraordinary event. How excited is the team? How, you know, you've got such an amount to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, well, the team are very, very excited. They're very, very nervous, though, about the other team because there was lots of ideas that these guys weren't very good anglers because they've watched them fish and they're like, they're not fishing like we'd expect to. And then they see their game faces and then they see how they actually fish. And it's going to be they're going to be very, very nervous because these are class anglers, all of them.
Where do you reckon the threats are coming from?
Ukraine, always. Romania, always. USA here this year, and I think they're going to do quite well. But Ukraine's the main threat.
Well, we're underway, Matt. Headed right down to the bottom end of the South Arm at Rutland. It seems that a lot of the boats went in completely the other direction, but a little bit of intel before the start of the match. I was chatting to the Ukrainian team manager. Of course, Ukraine, 4 times world champions, and they are one of the teams that everybody is watching in this event. Can you explain to us from a kind of a tactical perspective and actually possibly have a little look at the electronics, why have they come to this part of Rutland?
So what we've got here on Rutland is we're holding at the moment. We don't want to go right into where they're fishing, but we're basically holding in some shallow water before it drops off. So they're probably fishing in about 8 metres of water at the bottom of a shelf, which is classic pike territory. So the pike will be there without a shadow of a doubt, waiting for the bait fish to come out of those shallows. Looks like they're using their spot lock to hold them in position.
They'll have been practicing extensively for the last couple of days. They'll have an idea of depth and colour and speed of retrieve and things like that, but it's a different day to yesterday, isn't it? The wind's dropped, the sun's come out a bit.
Yeah, we've got a little bit more bright conditions, so that may well have pushed the fish a little bit deeper, but the pike aren't going to be up in these shallow bays because, I mean, it's so warm at the moment.
Well, here's something interesting happening, Matt. We've made our way up to the sort of the area between the 2 towers where the pipe is, and the Marshall boat is wandering over to see the 2 French anglers in boat number 4, and you spotted something on the way past which is quite interesting.
Well, it looks like they've got an anchor off the bow. It could be a drogue, I could be completely wrong, but at the angle, you're a boat angler, did it look like it was a drogue?
It's not where you'd put a drogue normally. That goes out either one side or the other of the boat, certainly not out of the bow.
It looks like they're at anchor, however, in the rules, as far as I'm aware, it states that no anchors are allowed with the exception of a GPS anchor, which is the spot lock that we talked about earlier. But looking at this, they're now clipping up and winding in, and he is going to the front of the boat, and we will shortly see whether that is a drogue or whether it is in fact
not a
an
drogue.
anchor.
That is definitely not a drogue.
Look at the bait fish.
Oh, extraordinary. Look at this ball of bait fish. And it's interesting that we've come here because the 2 boats in front of us now, boat 22 and boat 6, are Team England, and from my understanding of their tactic going into the first morning of this World Championships, they've decided that the key tactic is perch, and that could well be a big ball of bait fish. It could be a big shoulder perch.
Yeah, there's some, if you look on the left-hand screen, you can, not overly clearly, but you can definitely see some structure on there, and that is what the bait fish will hold around. And yeah, this does look like classic perch. So it looks like Mike Edgar in boat 22 is into a fish.
Winding very quickly.
Yes,
he's landing a fish.
Yep.
There it is.
Yep, so he's got a perch, one of these small perch. So this is what we've seen, that this could well be a perch match.
And that's where the technology comes into play here, because that trawling motor, the electric system that they've got at the front, will be able to hold them in that position.
Exactly, and I didn't notice one of those on the front of that French boat, which is why, in this strong wind, the technology is really helping.
Well, Matt, we're just behind the England anglers, and there on boat number 13 is the USA team, Max Wilson and Nate Winters, and landing net is in hand. It'll be interesting to see what this is.
Oh, it must have been a small perch. I
Small
literally
perch,
must
surely.
have missed that.
I saw his rod
came
tip go up and he really laid into that fish.
Very soft rod by the look of it.
Very
soft rod.
But you see, this is the bass fishing style that the pro bass leagues that these guys fish in. They're expert walleye anglers. They fish for Zander all the time. In fact, Max Wilson, who is the blonde-haired guy on the bow, recently won $88,000 by winning the walleye league in the States.
Not bad for a day's work.
Not bad for a day's work. These guys are professional anglers, and I'm fascinated to see how they do in this competition, because you can imagine if they start to get into this, the USA team, they really are top quality, and they fish professionally. They know what this sort of stuff's about. Now, I know it's a world championship, there's no money at stake here, but they are certainly competitive anglers.
Certainly a lot of pride at stake from what I've seen.
Well, American teams don't tend to hold back in world championships, do they? So
no.
It'll be interesting to see how they progress. Only their second ever appearance in a world championship too. So boat 14, Matt, that is Poland's Daniel Kowalski and Raymond Litvinsky. In Russia last year, they were the best pairing. They won the gold medal, and you could just see the landing net going in. Looks like a zander.
No, 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 that's
Is it
a good
perch?
perch, mate. That's a good perch.
That's a
That's
good
got to be a
perch.
25 centimetre perch, I would have said.
The Eastern European anglers in this competition, and we've got them from several different Eastern European nations, are absolutely top class at this sort of fishing. It's the kind of fishing they do all the time. And you can really see that these guys know what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see how big this fish is, because the fish we've seen the England team catching have been quite small. But that did look like a decent sized perch. Back it goes. That did look like a sort of 20 plus.
Yeah, that was a 20 centimetre fish, easily. And I've just seen another boat off the back here, netting fish. So let's have a look. What's the method that there we go, drop shot. So clearly both anglers fishing the drop shot. Seems to be the method.
Well, Matt, look at this. We're back with boat 7. The Ukrainian pair of Orlov and Shavby, and look at that.
Look at
a
that,
Rutland
what a
pike
pike.
in the sunshine. What a glorious shot that is.
Well done, guys.
It's not a huge pike by any stretch of the imagination, is it? But, you know, in the context, as we've said, of this competition, to see a fish like that, and just watch the release as that pike goes back in. Well, Matt, there's boat 22, the England pairing of James Dobby and Mike Edgar. And there are changes afoot here because things haven't quite worked out for the England team so far. We've seen manager Steve Collett pacing up and down like an expectant father on the entrance to the marina. Messages being passed left and right, and obviously England are trying to find something that works for them in this last little section of day 1 here at the World Championships.
Well, if there's 2 guys that can spot fish on this water, I would say that's them. I mean, look at that bank of finder screens that you can see right there. I mean, Mike and James, both class anglers on Grafham and Rutland, you know, and, you know, as you say, they're moving about, trying to find some fish in these last few hours, which we know is notoriously difficult on this venue.
It's interesting that the other England boat too, boat number 6 with James Potts and Mark Spain on board, has also come over to this section of the reservoir, because we saw earlier the Lithuanians were having some success here, in fact quite a lot of success. It doesn't take long for word to go around, does it?
No, you've got all of these bank runners, and remember the other England guys that aren't fishing, they're doing a huge job. So they're spotting, they've got spotting scopes, binoculars, they're driving round to the other points. As soon as people are catching fish, they're feeding back to Steve and saying, this is happening, these people have caught this, these people have caught that, and he's having to use and interpret that information, and then he has to make that call as to where he deploys his guys to.
Look at that, Matt. What a brilliant fish to catch from
Stunning.
Rutland. Back he goes. The Lithuanians are at it again, and you can see why they're so happy. Fantastic skills. Just as the Lithuanians have landed that incredible zander, just a matter of 50 metres or so away, boat 22, the England guys, James Dobby and Mike Edgar, and they don't seem to be able to buy a take for love nor money.
It must be gutting at this stage in the competition to witness another nation land that fish, like right under your nose. You're thinking, that was my fish, I should have had that. It's not going to help at this stage.
The fascinating thing, the edges that are in this competition, this is one of the things I love about the sort of fishing at this level. The edges that are just happening, you know, the presentation you talked about earlier with the Lithuanians, that kind of almost paternoster presentation with the weight away from the main line and the soft bait kicked out. It's something I've not seen before. You were saying, I mean, you've been to a lot more of these competitions than I have. You've not seen it either.
No, and sometimes people come from a different country. I mean, I've learned loads today just
you know, presenting this with you and going around driving the boat, watching the tactics that they're using. But that rig is obviously basically it's neutral density. So that soft plastic on that extended arm is just completely free, and it's just acting like a natural wounded baitfish. And the thing is, Rutland will have seen every single jig head, every single lure colour, every single shape, size of lure, but they won't have seen one behaving like that behaves on that rig, and that is where they've got the edge.
Looked like a tough one out there today, Mark.
Yeah, so we went out early on, went out to our usual spots that we knew were producing. Had a couple of good fish early on, but then we just started hitting small fish. It was just small fish after small fish, and we couldn't just work the shoals to try and pick the bigger ones out of it. Obviously we're in radio communication, so we're hearing what's going on around us. Not many other people were doing that well either off of there. I think there was one particular boat that seemed to be catching scorers, albeit not big scorers. So yeah, it is just a really tough one out there today. And then at the end of the day we moved around to the South Arm, and to be quite honest, we were just looking for Christmas tree shoals and perch. We came across a couple of bites. I got bitten off at the end by a pike, and yeah, that was the day for us really. So yeah, tough one out there for us. Nothing like we've had in practice, certainly.
Guys, you seem to have had a really good day on the water. Tell us how it went for you, what it was like.
In training time we got some spots, but when came on that moment it works not so well. And each day, these 2 training days, I mean before when we been some 2 weeks ago, training it's been quite well. And in this time it's changing very much weather, and it's not so easy, I can tell you.
You had a little spot there, the 2 boats were working together.
Yeah.
Really good tactics, seem to be working for you.
That's our boats. These guys, not first time in the national team, you know. We just first year came in the sport, and luxury came quite good. And yeah, we closed the spot. We're not sure can English guys been around before in training time. We're not sure, or coming there, or don't want on the wind being, you know. But we see English guys go far away from the wind, and wind, you know, takes away many equipages.
Your presentation, your rigs are very interesting. They look a little bit different to what we would normally see. It's like almost a paternoster.
Yeah, but that's not the same.
What's it called, the rig? Do you know?
I don't know. It can be paternoster, but yes, with some specific stuff.
Some secrets. We like secrets. But it works.
Yeah, it works. We hope it can work better than another guys have some secrets.
So here are the scores after the first day of the World Lure Championships at Rutland. At the top, Lithuania. They caught 59 fish on day 1 and claimed 7 points. Estonia were pushed into second place because Lithuania's fish were bigger. The Czech Republic were 10 points back. The host nation England's hopes were destroyed in a brutal day on their home water. Their 11 fish saw them second from last, ahead only of South Africa. Well, morning of the second day of the World Championships here at Rutland, and the weather's turned out nice, Matthew.
Absolutely, well, we could say positively tropical, but I think we'd be lying.
Yes, we would. It's vile. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a really challenging day ahead for the teams. As you've seen from the scoreboard, there are a few teams who've made a bit of a mess of things, and I have to say, although you can't win a World Championship on the first day, you can certainly lose one, and I fear that's what happened for poor old England yesterday.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, judging by what happened, they had a plan, and it was just the wrong plan.
We've had a couple of changes too in the England team, so in come Andy Mitten and Ricky Cooper, and out go Mark Spain and Jamie Potts. We'll see how they get on. Well, Matt, we're underway, and this is a fascinating competition today. There are so many teams still in this, and these guys are one of the teams who've got a really, really good chance of a medal. This is the second boat of the Estonian team, and we're looking at Andres Kapp and Rego Padar. Estonia are on level points with Lithuania. but Lithuania, because they had such a fantastic day yesterday, caught just a few more fish and weighed in a little bit heavier. So it'd be interesting to see what these guys do. What can you see of their tactics today?
The tactics that they're doing at the moment, we've come onto this, they're fishing up a shelf onto the shallower water at the moment, and they're allowing the baits to creep down that shelf to where they obviously feel the predators are sitting at the bottom of the shelf. And looking at the finder, they're pretty bang on the money, to be fair.
Yeah, there's a lot of
bait fish up on that shallow water as we came off of it.
I think the overriding thing today is, of course, going to be the weather. And one of the things that's really interesting about this is the fact that the wind has just completely dropped away. It's actually not, yesterday it was a southerly, today it's kind of northwesterly. The reservoir is like a mill pond, really, you know, when you compare it to yesterday.
Yeah.
What effect is that going to have on their presentation?
Well, they're going to be able to slow their presentations down. They're going to be able to fish a lot more effectively. If you look at what they're doing now, they're basically doing several quick turns of the reel handle and then a pause and allowing that bait to fall to the bottom. So as it falls, that paddle tail that we looked at earlier drops down through the water column and it vibrates loads, and it's usually on that pause and letting that bait fall to the bottom that they're going to get the hits.
Now, of course, the issue, and this is what a lot of the teams found yesterday, it's one thing finding the fish, but it's something quite another actually getting them to take your lures. And my feeling, and what was being said in some of the sort of team meetings after yesterday's event, was the amount of pressure that the fish went through in practice, particularly the zander, they've simply switched off.
Yes.
You know, they've taken cover. Hardly surprising when you've got, you know, loads of the best lure anglers in the world who've been practicing on this water hard for a couple of weeks.
I should think there's not many fish that haven't felt a hook.
And this is where, quite interestingly, I think the Lithuanians yesterday had a little bit of an edge. It was what you were saying about the slight difference in presentation. You know, those rigs that they were using.
This looks like he's hooked up. Looking at the rod tip, I would say that is a perch, just by the head shakes on the rod tip.
That's quite a sort of a robust rod, isn't it? It's not one of the really soft ones that we were looking at yesterday where they were playing the smaller fish, so this could be something half decent.
Oh no, look small zander.
And that just goes to prove that if you do put a little bit of pressure on those fish, you can entice something to take, so that's a really good piece of angling. Little subtleties in presentation changes. Just having a little bit of a measure.
There we go. Back it goes.
So it's a measure, that's perfect. What did it measure?
Too small, undersized.
Undersized. So that's zander undersized, which is... And then Matt, boat number 25, that's one of the Czech Republic boats. They're in third place, 10 points back from the two leaders, Estonia and Lithuania. And we're looking over at David Kudelka and Thomas Kudelka. I'm assuming they're brothers. I could be making a big assumption. And nice to see the steward is taking precautions for the weather.
Yeah, very, very Mary Poppins, I must say.
He wouldn't have been able to put that umbrella up yesterday, would he?
No, definitely not. They're fishing really slow as well, these guys. It's just sort of 3 turns of the reel handle, and then he's pausing and letting that bait drop down to the bottom. Again, we're seeing predators on the bottom here, so it's a good indication.
Fish on, and look, you have to put your umbrella down to measure a fish, which is a good system. And what have we got here?
It looks like a tiny zander, or a micro pike maybe, but I think it is the world's smallest pike.
I don't think that one's going to count, is it? No, straight back in, that one didn't count. But it does show there are a few fish around. Matt, big day for these boys today. Boat 3, this is one of the 2 Lithuanian boats. They're leading the World Championship. They had this area pretty much to themselves for a long period yesterday. Today, well, there's a bit of more pressure here. The weather's changed. It's going to be fascinating to see what these guys do today.
The conditions are literally poles apart from the 2 days. And one thing that I've found on both Rutland and Grafham, in my experience, is rough weather can really switch the fish on. And yesterday, by God, it was rough.
It was. Do you think that's because the bait balls get moved around?
I think it's like a washing machine down there. It's like a washing machine down there, and the fish are getting battered, and the zander are basically just mopping things up. I know some of the guys said that they've seen when they've put a fish back, that hasn't been going back too well, as it's swimming down, on their screen they've seen another fish come up and hit it.
But if the water's not churning today, is that presentation going to be as effective? Well, I think we've just got the answer. Is that a fish? I think that is a fish.
Yeah.
So they've had one measurable fish already this morning. I think the feeling is, well, one of the Lithuanian competitors answers his phone. That fish might be quite small.
Well, I saw the size of his drop shot weight on there, which...
God, it's enormous.
There's his drop shot weight coming out, and there's the leader up to the fish.
And again, as you said a few minutes ago, fish care all important in this championship. Every fish has to be netted, so there's no swinging of the fish. Everything's catch and release, everything goes back in. That one too small to measure and is returned.
So I think at this point, Andy, we could maybe look at the mat, the measuring mat, and explain how these guys are measuring them.
So this is the kind of measure that is on every single boat in this competition. We've just had a little bit of a lull and it's actually stopped raining for a second, so I thought I'd just explain this to you. You can see this is graduated in centimetres, and the idea is when you catch a fish, you rest its nose against this plate here and you measure it according to this scale. Now, this is helpfully marked up, so you can probably just about see 25 centimetres is the minimum landing size for a perch. If we move a little bit further down, 40 centimetres for a zander, and then 50 centimetres for a pike. And of course, if you're lucky enough to get a little bit further down the scale with a pike, there are some huge fish here at Rutland. If we see anything down past the metre length, it could be a very special fish indeed. Well, Matt, something really interesting is happening here. This is boat 9, this is the Czech Republic, and we're looking at Jakub Kola and Jan Hubka. They have had 16 fish today. They're in third overnight. They've got a really great chance here, and if Lithuania and Estonia aren't catching a few more, these guys could be pushing up towards the gold medal position.
Yeah, and so they're both, again, they're on jigs, they're fishing small sort of 5-inch shads on heavy jig heads, and they're doing that exactly what we were saying at the top end that the Estonian team are doing, which is that sort of 3-turn stop, pause it and allow that bait to flutter down to the bottom. But long casts, downwind, fine braid, heavy jig heads.
The other interesting thing here is that they've had a real mixture of fish. They've had pike, perch and zander. I'm assuming they're switching between tactics, but you know, they're catching all the species that count in this event.
We're in 25 metres of water here.
Wow.
So everything is going to be here. You're going to have the perch, you're going to have the pike, and you're going to have the zander. You definitely have the zander here.
So here we go. There are obviously some fish here.
This is going to be a small zander.
Winding quickly, landing net in hand.
I think it may be smaller one, fish.
Small but a fish. The key is whether it measures or not, of course, and what species. So 25 centimetres for a perch.
40 centimetres for the zander.
And 50 for a pike.
Yeah.
It's not a pike.
No, it's clearly not a pike. Playing it quite steady. I think we're going to see a small zander come up, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to make the 40 centimetre minimum. Yeah, small zander. Oh, I don't know.
That's close, you know.
Nah. Yeah.
It's too small.
30 centimetres? Yeah.
Worth a check. And that's the routine with these events. So you saw us show the measuring board earlier on. Really important to check that your fish, you know, you never know, you can judge it. You look at the fish and you think, oh, that's going to be a 35. Sometimes they just creep over and push up towards that 40. It doesn't need to be 41, it just needs to be 40 to count.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's the measuring board in operation. Nose of the fish will go up against that plastic end of the board. Just the steward just checking.
35.
35 doesn't count. Nice fish, but back it goes, safely back into Rutland. Well, Matt, the day's progressing quite slowly as it seems. We're starting to see that I think probably angling pressure is having an impact on how many fish are being caught. We're drifting around behind two of the contenders. Boat 17 is the Estonians, and in the background, boat 30 is the Polish team. Both of them catching, but their returns are not as good as yesterday.
No, noticeably the tactics still, we've come back to the Estonian team. We saw them this morning fishing in the shallower water. They've pulled off into the deeper water. According to the marshal, I think they've had 2 zander and 2 pike. They're still fishing quite large baits, heavy jig heads, so they're targeting those bigger fish, where I think the Lithuanian team were sort of hedging their bets a little more between the perch and the zander, and they're building a bigger score through doing that. Some of these baits that you've got here, they will not be targeting those smaller perch that we've seen the other teams. I'm not so sure on the Polish tactics, we haven't quite got close enough to them. It looks very similar, sort of 3 turns, stop, let that jig fall.
And the other thing, of course, to consider, because we're talking about predatory fishing here, is that the fish are opportunists, aren't they? If they see a feeding opportunity, they might not take it the first time the lure goes past their nose, but they might take it the second or third, and you've just got to keep working that spot, and eventually, hopefully, one of the fish in the shoal will trigger.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's food conversion ratio, so they're not going to go charging off 100 metres because they've seen a bait over there that they've got to chase. If the bait is like a nice easy snack that they can just, is literally in front of their face, they'll take that, because it's no brains, it's literally being brought to you on a tea tray.
Well, Matt, we're into the last hour of this event, and here we are with the Lithuanians in boat 19, and they are fighting all the way. We know there are challenges from elsewhere. The Czech Republic and France certainly are on their tail, but these guys have had 14 fish, so they are not out of it by any stretch.
I think it's like every other team, they're having to wade through those fish that are so close to being scoring fish, and all you can do is grind. You've just got to keep going right until that last minute, because if these guys get one decent pike, like, you know, a 70-80 centimetre pike, the points that gains is unbelievable. But you just have to stay focused. They're going to be cold, they're going to be tired, they're going to be fed up and just wanting to go in, but they have to fight until that last minute.
And they're boat 25 Czech Republic, David and Thomas Kadelka, but they've only had 9 fish. This is nip and tuck, Matt. This is fascinating stuff, isn't it?
It's going to go right down to the wire. It will literally be, they've got to stay focused and literally keep fishing right until the last minute.
World Championship decided on centimetres, incredible, absolutely amazing.
Maintaining focus as well, so things like food are going to be important, I reckon. You're going to have to keep those energy levels up, the cold's going to be getting to them, that sensitivity in the fingers, that's going to be taking a real hammering.
And Matt, there's boat 17, the other team in contention, second place overnight, the Estonians. They've had 4 fish, 2 pike. Now this is going to be key, because their decision to fish for pike, obviously a longer fish, more points, measured against the perch and the zander, which are much smaller.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, a lot of the teams have gone away from the spot lock and they're going for the drogue and they're drifting. That meaning they're covering a lot more water, and they're just trying to find those fish sat up on that shelf in the shallow water, ready to ambush those prey fish. So yeah, this is definitely pike tactics. It's exactly what I would do if I was after the pike. I would be drifting those shallow bays, but like you say, it is a big gamble.
And we're in the dying throes of this competition now. I get the feeling that if one of these teams was going to win the event, they've already done what they need to do. We're just going to have to wait and see who has got the edge. So after 2 days when the English weather threw absolutely everything at Rutland, it was the men in red who took the world title. Estonia, crucially, caught 6 pike to claim their first ever medal, and it was a gold. The Czech Republic's charge on day 2 put them into second, with Latvia taking the bronze.